The Wars of the Roses was a dynastic struggle for the English throne, a bitter and bloody conflict that pitted the House of Lancaster against the House of York. This brutal civil war, spanning 3 decades, was characterized by its savagery and the constant shifting of power and allegiances. By the spring of 1461, the kingdom was deeply fractured, exhausted by years of intermittent but ferocious warfare. The Lancastrian king, Henry VI, was a gentle and pious man, but he was an ineffectual ruler, prone to bouts of debilitating mental illness. His formidable wife, Queen Margaret of Anjou, was the true power behind the Lancastrian cause, a determined and ruthless leader. On the other side stood the Yorkists, led by the charismatic and ambitious Richard, Duke of York, until his death at the Battle of Wakefield. His claim to the throne was strong, and his death only served to galvanize his supporters and intensify their resolve. The mantle of Yorkist leadership fell to his eldest son, Edward, the young and vigorous Earl of March. Edward was a formidable warrior, standing an impressive 6 feet 4 inches tall, a giant in his age. Following a Lancastrian victory at the Second Battle of St. Albans, the road to London lay open, but they hesitated. This crucial delay allowed Edward and his powerful ally, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, to seize the capital. In London, the handsome and popular Edward was proclaimed King Edward IV, though the Lancastrian threat was far from neutralized. A decisive confrontation was inevitable. The country could not suffer 2 kings. Lancastrians retreated north, gathering a vast army from their heartlands to crush the Yorkist usurper once and for all. Edward de Towton, now a king in name, had to win the throne, in fact, and he marched his own formidable force north in pursuit. The stage was being set for what would become the largest and bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil. The 2 largest armies ever assembled in England converged near the small village of Towton in Yorkshire. Estimates suggest a combined total of over 75,000 men were present, a staggering figure for the time. The Lancastrian army, commanded by the Duke of Somerset, held a strong defensive position on high ground. The Yorkist army, led by the newly crowned Edward IV, faced an uphill battle in every sense. The date was Palm Sunday, March 29th, 1461, a day that would live in infamy. The weather was atrocious, a bitter, swirling wind carrying flurries of sleet and snow across the bleak landscape. A preliminary clash occurred at Ferrybridge, where the Yorkists fought to cross the River Aire. The main battle took place on a wide plateau between the villages of Towton and Saxton. As the armies drew up their lines, the snowstorm intensified, blowing directly into the faces of the Lancastrian soldiers. This quirk of fate would prove to be a decisive factor in the engagement to come. The Yorkist commander, Lord Falkenberg, a seasoned and cunning strategist, saw an immediate advantage. He ordered his archers to advance, fire a single volley, and then retreat out of range. The wind, blowing from behind the Yorkists, carried their arrows an exceptional distance into the Lancastrian ranks. The Lancastrian archers, blinded by the snow and misjudging the distance, attempted to return fire. Their arrows, fighting against the gale, fell harmlessly short in the no-man's land between the armies. Falkenberg then commanded his men to advance again, pluck the enemy's arrows from the ground, and fire them back. This created a one-sided, demoralizing, and lethal arrow storm that rained down upon the Lancastrians. Unable to endure the constant barrage and unable to effectively retaliate, the Lancastrians were forced to abandon their strong position. They charged forward, down the slope and into the blizzard, to engage in hand-to-hand combat. The two armies crashed together with a terrifying roar of men and the clang of steel on steel. What followed was a brutal, grinding melee that lasted for hours without pause. The fighting was savage and personal, with men hacking, stabbing and bludgeoning each other in the swirling snow. Visibility was poor, and the battlefield became a confusing and terrifying mass of struggling bodies. The sheer press of men was so great that the dead remained standing, held upright by the crush of the living. King Edward IV fought in the vanguard of his army, a towering and inspiring figure for his men. He risked his life alongside his soldiers, demonstrating his courage and his right to be king. For hours, neither side could gain a decisive advantage, the lines pushing back and forth. The battle devolved into a grim contest of endurance and slaughter. The scale of the killing was unprecedented in English history. Men fought with a desperate ferocity, knowing that defeat meant not just loss, but annihilation. The afternoon wore on, and the tide of the battle began to turn. Fresh Yorkist reinforcements, led by the Duke of Norfolk, arrived late in the day. Though Norfolk himself was too ill to fight, his men were fresh and eager for battle. Their arrival on the Lancastrian flank was the final, crushing blow. The exhausted and demoralized Lancastrian line finally broke. What had been a battle now turned into a rout, and the rout into a massacre. The Yorkist soldiers, given orders to show no mercy, pursued the fleeing enemy with a vengeance. Many Lancastrians fled towards a small river, the Cockbeck. In their panic and exhaustion, they threw away their helmets and armor to run faster. This made them easy prey for the pursuing Yorkist cavalry and foot soldiers. The Cockbeck, swollen by the melting snow, was a treacherous obstacle. So many fleeing soldiers were cut down, trying to cross that their bodies formed a gruesome bridge. This horrific feature of the battle became known as the Bridge of Bodies. The killing continued for miles, all the way to the city of York. When the bloody work was finally done, the scale of the casualties was staggering. It is estimated that around 28,000 men died at the Battle of Towton and during the subsequent rout. This represented roughly 1% of the entire population of England at the time. No other battle on English soil has come close to this horrific death toll. The Lancastrian cause was utterly crushed, its army annihilated. Many of its greatest nobles lay dead on the field. The Duke of Somerset and other captured leaders were summarily executed in York after the battle. King Henry VI, Margaret of Anjou, and their son fled north into exile in Scotland. The victory at Towton secured the throne for Edward IV, at least for the time being. It was a brutal and bloody coronation, won on a field of snow and corpses. The battle was a turning point in the Wars of the Roses, establishing the House of York's dominance. The memory of Towton, the bloodiest day in English history, would haunt the nation for generations. Mass graves discovered centuries later confirmed the brutal nature of the fighting. Skulls were found cleft in two by swords, or pierced by war hammers. Towton was not a battle of chivalry. It was a battle of extermination. The political landscape of England was irrevocably altered by the events of that one dreadful day. The power of the old Lancastrian nobility was broken on that bloody field. A new dynasty, the House of York, had cemented its claim in the most brutal way imaginable. The battle began in a snowstorm, a white shroud for the thousands who would die. The sound of the wind was soon drowned out by the screams of men. Archers loosed their shafts, a deadly rain that fell indiscriminately. The initial arrow exchange heavily favored the Yorkist side. This forced the Lancastrians into a premature and desperate charge. The clash of the main bodies of infantry was a moment of supreme violence. For 10 hours, The fate of England hung in the balance. Men forked over the bodies of their fallen comrades. The field became a slick, treacherous carpet of death. No quarter was asked, and none was given. The arrival of Norfolk's men was the tipping point. Panic, a more deadly foe than any sword, spread through the Lancastrian ranks. Flight towards Cockbeck was a race for life. The small river became a death trap, its waters choked with the dead and dying. The pursuit was relentless, a testament to the hatred between the two factions. The sun set on a scene of unimaginable carnage. Edward IV had won his kingdom, but at a terrible price. The battle left scars on the landscape and the national psyche. Towton stands as a grim reminder of the brutal reality of civil war. The sheer number of combatants makes it unique in English military history. Use of the weather by the Yorkists showed tactical brilliance. The Lancastrians were outmaneuvered before the main fight even began. The melee was a test of raw courage and brute strength. The battle lasted from morning until well into the evening. The dead were buried in great pits dug into the battlefield. Local legends for centuries spoke of the river running red. The political consequences were immediate and profound. The House of York's reign would last for over 2 decades after this victory. But the memory of the Red Rose was not so easily extinguished. War was not over, but Towton was its brutal, bloody apex. The battle was fought with longbows, swords, axes, and pole arms. Armor provided some protection, but was vulnerable to heavy weapons. The psychological impact on the soldiers must have been immense. The leaders of the Lancastrian army paid the ultimate price for their defeat. The battle demonstrated Edward IV's skill as a field commander. His personal involvement in the fighting was a key factor in Yorkist morale. The Lancastrian command structure fell apart during the rout. The terrain itself became a weapon, from the high ground to the deadly river. The wind and snow were arguably the most effective Yorkist allies. The battle was a human catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. It represented the tragic cost of a divided kingdom. The name Towton would forever be synonymous with slaughter. The battle's legacy is written in the bones discovered beneath its fields. The sheer ferocity of the hand-to-hand combat is hard to comprehend. Soldiers fought in a state of desperate, adrenaline-fueled rage. The Lancastrian army was not just defeated, it was effectively erased. The victory gave the Yorkist regime a decade of relative stability. The battle's narrative is a grim tale of strategy, weather, and brutality. The White Rose of York triumphed on that cold Palm Sunday. The echoes of the screams from Towton Field faded into history. The river Cockbeck eventually ran clear again. But the story of that day serves as a permanent, bloody landmark in the annals of England.